There wasn't anything unusual about the day. That's what haunts me now. It was a Tuesday in late October. The kind of day where the air starts to bite and the trees look like they're bleeding out orange and red. I was driving home from work. Nothing on the radio but static and an overplayed pop song I couldn't stand. I remember tapping my fingers on the steering wheel, thinking about dinner, about how quiet the house had been lately, and how we hadn't had a real conversation in, what, a week? 2? I pulled into the driveway just after 6. Her car was already there, parked a little crooked like she'd been in a rush. I almost smiled. She always parked like she was double-daring gravity to mess with her. It was one of those harmless quirks I used to find cute. But something felt off and I couldn't explain why. As I got out of my car, I noticed the windows on hers were rolled up tight, but the back seat wasn't empty. There was something draped over it. A scarf. Wool. Gray. I leaned in to get a better look, and that's when the scent hit me. Cologne. Not mine. Not even close. It wasn't the kind of scent you forget. It was sharp, masculine, too heavy, like the guy who wore it didn't know when to stop spraying. It clung to the fabric like it had been there for days. I stood there for a second too long, just breathing it in, my brain already building narratives I didn't want to believe. She never wore anything like that, and we didn't know anyone who did. Not that I could think of. When I walked into the house, the lights were already on. I could hear music playing in the kitchen, some playlist of hers I used to like. The smell of garlic and roasted tomatoes filled the air, warm and familiar, like comfort food made to erase a bad day. She looked up when I stepped inside. "Hey, babe," she said, smiling. "Dinner's almost ready. How was work?" I tried to read her face. Was there guilt in her eyes? Was there something forced in that smile? Or was I just imagining things? I kept my tone casual. "Not bad. Hey, is that scarf in your car yours?" She glanced over her shoulder toward the hallway like she could actually see the car through the walls. "Scarf? Yeah, gray one. On the back seat." Her smile didn't fade. "Oh, that must be Mike's. I gave him a ride last week after that late meeting. He probably left it there. You know how forgetful he is. Mike." I remembered her mentioning him once or twice. New guy in marketing. Supposedly married. Father of 2. Average height. Balding. I'd never met him. "Didn't smell like his cologne," I said, almost joking. She laughed. "What, are you sniffing random things in my car now?" I shrugged. It was strong. Just caught me off guard. She walked over, reached up, and touched my face. "You've been working too hard. You're getting suspicious over a scarf now?" She tilted her head, kissed my cheek. "Come on, eat. You're starving and cranky." I wanted to push, to say something about that doesn't feel right. But she was already walking back to the stove, humming along to the music like this was just another Tuesday. Maybe it was. Maybe I was making something out of nothing. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me because things had felt distant lately. Or maybe that's exactly what she wanted me to think. I sat at the table and watched her plate the pasta. She was wearing a dark blue sweater, one I hadn't seen before, and jeans that looked newer than I remembered. Her hair was up, but with that casual messiness that somehow takes more effort than a formal style. She looked good, relaxed, effortless. But underneath that calm was something rehearsed. I saw it now, the timing of her laugh, the way she kept the conversation going without pause, like she didn't want silence to give me a second to think too much. She poured us both a glass of wine and sat across from me. "So," she said, spinning her fork through the noodles, "how's the Johnson account going?" I blinked. She never asked about my work unless it was big news. But she was steering, guiding the topic away from the scarf, from suspicion, from whatever that smell was still doing in her backseat. I answered, pretending not to notice. "It's all right. They're dragging their feet on signing. Probably want to renegotiate." "Ugh. I hate that," she said quickly. "You work so hard and they just stall. They don't appreciate the effort you put in." Her voice was soft, concerned. The kind of tone you use when you're comforting someone, or distracting them. And just like that, I was the one under the spotlight. The overworked, underappreciated husband with paranoia cooked up by stress. I felt like I was being managed, like a conversation I wasn't even fully part of. She reached across the table, took my hand. "You always do your best, Adam. Don't let them walk all over you." I nodded. "Yeah, thanks." But that scarf, that damn scarf, it was still there, still burning in the back of my brain like a warning siren I was trying to ignore. I thought about bringing it up again, about asking why she hadn't noticed it sooner, why she didn't mention it when she cleaned the car like she usually did on weekends. But I didn't. I just ate, smiled, pretended it was a normal night. And maybe that's what scared me the most, how easy it was to pretend. After dinner, she insisted on cleaning up, told me to go unwind. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the floor. The walls felt too quiet. The same silence that had been creeping into our lives over the past couple of months. It was like a third person in the room now. She used to text me throughout the day, little things, memes, questions. "Do you want chicken or pasta tonight? Can't wait to see you." Now, sometimes I wouldn't hear from her at all until she walked in the door. No explanation, just silence. I told myself she was just busy, that work was crazy, that people go through phases. But when did it stop being a phase? And when did I stop being part of her world? That night, I lay awake while she scrolled through her phone beside me. Screen tilted just enough away from my view. When I shifted closer, she turned it off and set it down. "Early meeting tomorrow," she said, voice already sleepy. I didn't respond, just stared at the ceiling, counted the seconds between her breaths, waited for her to fall asleep so I could breathe. And still, all I could see was that scarf. That one little thread that didn't belong. And deep down, I already knew it wasn't the only thing out of place. The thing about doubt is that once it moves in, it doesn't leave quietly. Creeps in like smoke under the door, invisible at first until everything smells wrong. That scarf wasn't just an object anymore. It became the spark that lit up a whole timeline I tried to bury in the routine of work, dinner, and late-night silence. Suddenly, I couldn't stop thinking about the things I'd ignored, the gut feelings I had dismissed in the name of trust. And trust, that's the word that kept echoing in my head. Not love, not marriage, trust. After that night, everything she did felt different. Not because it had changed necessarily, but because I was finally paying attention. She had started coming home later. It had crept in gradually. First it was just a quick meeting after hours. Then, "Sorry, we got stuck in traffic after the client dinner." And before I knew it, she was getting home after 9 p.m. more often than not. Always apologetic. Always with takeout in hand, acting like bringing me lukewarm Thai food made up for the hours of not knowing where she really was. And then there were the weekends, once sacred, now scattered. She used to sleep in with me on Saturdays, our legs tangled under the sheets, half watching cooking shows and laughing about how we never actually cooked. Lately, though, she was always tired or needed to run errands. I'd wake up alone and find her already gone, sometimes for hours. Once I asked where she'd been all morning. She said Trader Joe's and the dry cleaner. But there was no bag of groceries, no receipt, and her hands smelled like citrus lotion, not detergent or fruit or anything from a grocery run. Just citrus. Something new. Another time, she told me she was helping her mom with something. I texted her mom later that evening, just making casual conversation, and her mom mentioned she hadn't seen her in weeks. I didn't say anything then. Not to her, not even to myself. But the doubt deepened, and I started remembering even more, like how she'd changed her morning routine. She used to drive the same route to work every day. We'd even joke about how boring it was. Then one day she said, "Traffic's been crazy on the usual road, so I'm trying something different." And I believed her. But I noticed her turning left at the light instead of right. More than once. I watched from the upstairs window when I worked from home. At first, I told myself she must have changed offices or had meetings elsewhere. But the curiosity turned into something darker. I started wondering if there was a pattern, if she was heading toward someone instead of away from traffic. And the hotel keycard, that was the one that really shook me. It was hooked to her keyring one morning when she tossed me her keys to move her car. Just a little plastic rectangle with a faint logo I couldn't place. Not a brand-name hotel, not one of those big chains. Something smaller. Local. Too local. When I asked about it later, casually like I was teasing, she blinked. Just once. Then smiled. Oh, that's from that conference last month. They let us keep the keycards as souvenirs. Weird, right? Except she never mentioned a conference. I knew because I'd been planning a weekend getaway that month. One she had told me we couldn't do because she had too much on her plate. That was the first night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours trying to do the math, trying to make the dates line up, trying to find any excuse, any plausible explanation that didn't point toward betrayal. But the pieces wouldn't fit. And then came the new perfume. She'd always worn the same scent. Light, floral, the kind that lingered on pillows and made me miss her when she left in the morning. But suddenly it was different, heavier, bolder, more daring. I mentioned it once, jokingly. Going rogue with a new scent? She smiled and said, just switching it up. Switching it up. That's what she called it. Like our marriage was a playlist she was tired of and needed to shuffle. Even her clothes started changing. Subtly. Tighter jeans. New blouses. A silk camisole I knew I hadn't seen before. She used to throw on an old hoodie to run errands. Now she looked like she was dressing for a dinner reservation every time she left the house, even if it was just to grab coffee. I started feeling like a ghost inside my own home, visible but not really seen. I'd ask questions and get rehearsed answers. I crack jokes and get polite laughter. She was present but never fully there, like she was operating on autopilot while her real self had clocked out. Even the way she kissed me changed. It was brief now. Lips barely touching, always in a rush. Not the kind of kiss that said I love you, but one that said this is what I'm supposed to do before I leave. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Part of me was still clinging to the idea that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. That maybe all of this was just in my head, strung together by paranoia and a single scarf in the backseat. But another part of me, the part that had started sleeping with one eye open, knew better. I started keeping track. Quietly. I didn't tell anyone. Not friends, not family. Not even my brother, who I told everything. I just watched. Observed. Took mental notes. I checked our shared calendar. She'd stopped adding events to it. Checked our bank statements. A few odd charges from places I didn't recognize. Restaurants we'd never been to. A coffee shop on the other side of town. I even started noticing the way she looked at her phone. Before, it was casual. Open. She'd text on the couch beside me and laugh, sometimes showing me funny things her friends sent. Now, she tilted the screen away, turned it face down. Once, I walked in while she was texting, and she clicked it off like a teenager hiding something from her parents. Every time I noticed something, I'd make an excuse. She's busy. She's tired. She's just stressed. We're both off. We're in a funk. But those excuses were wearing thin. One night, I caught her smiling at her phone. Not the kind of smile you give to a meme or a group chat. It was softer, fonder. And when I asked, "Who's that?" she flinched. A subtle shift in her shoulders. A second of hesitation. "Oh, just someone from work," she said. "Team stuff. We're figuring out next week's schedule." She never used to lie so easily. After that, I started sleeping in the guest room. She said it was fine, said I snored too much anyway, and she needed better rest. We laughed about it, even made a joke out of it. But we both knew it wasn't about snoring. It was about distance, and she was already halfway gone. The thing is, I didn't need a smoking G*N. I didn't need to catch her in bed with someone or hear a confession. I could feel the shift. Love doesn't vanish overnight. It fades. With every quiet lie, every unanswered text, every meaningless kiss, every new perfume. I didn't say a word. I just let the space between us grow. But inside, I was already mourning the loss of something I hadn't even buried yet. It happened on a Thursday. I hadn't planned anything. I didn't wake up that morning thinking today's the day everything falls apart. But maybe that's how it always happens. Not with a bang, but with a quiet moment you can never unsee. She told me she was going to help her brother move. He's finally getting out of that old apartment, she said over breakfast, barely looking up from her phone. Wants me to help sort through boxes. I nodded slowly, stirring my coffee, pretending to listen. Her brother was always moving. New place every year. Couldn't hold down a lease to save his life. But something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. When did he ask you? I asked. She blinked, like I'd interrupted something important on her screen. Last night, I think. Why? No reason. Just curious. She shrugged and walked out of the kitchen. I heard her grab her purse, keys jangling, and a second later, the front door closed. Just like that, no hug, no goodbye, just a disappearing act. That should have been the end of it. Let her go. Let it play out like all the other lies. But this time, I don't know. Something inside me snapped. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and tapped on her brother's name. We weren't close, but we got along. Grabbed a beer a few times when the family got together. He answered on the second ring, voice groggy. Hey, man, I said, keeping my tone casual. Sorry if I woke you. Nah, he mumbled. Just got up. I hesitated. You moving today? A pause. No. I closed my eyes. She said she was helping you move. Said you asked her last night. Another pause, longer this time. Adam, I haven't talked to her in like 2 weeks. That was it. That was the moment the denial fell apart completely. Everything inside me went cold. I didn't say much after that. Just thanked him, said I must have gotten it wrong, and hung up. I sat there in silence, staring at the screen. My heart wasn't racing, that was the strangest part. I thought I'd feel anger or heartbreak, maybe both, but instead I felt calm. Not peaceful exactly, more like the kind of calm you get right before a storm. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and left. I didn't even know where I was going at first. I just drove, past the familiar roads, past the grocery store she said she'd been going to every Saturday, past the cafe where she caught up on work. And then I saw it. A small roadside hotel off the highway, tucked behind a gas station and a fast food joint. The kind of place people go when they don't want to be seen. Her car was parked outside, near the side entrance. I pulled into the lot and backed into a space where I could see the door. I turned off the engine and just waited. 20 minutes passed. Maybe more. The whole time, my hands rested on the wheel, steady. My mind wasn't racing anymore. I already knew. Then the door opened. She walked out first, wearing the same jeans she left in, but her hair was down now, and her smile, God, that smile, wasn't the one she gave me. It was softer, free, like the kind you wear around someone who makes you feel new again. He followed behind her, tall, dark coat, confident stride. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I didn't need to. I knew it was the same guy, the one whose scent lingered on that scarf, the one who'd been occupying the space between us for months. They were holding hands, laughing. He said something, and she leaned in closer, like it was a shared secret. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't let myself fully admit until now. This wasn't some fling. This wasn't about loneliness or confusion or a single mistake. She chose this. Over and over again, she chose this. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo. Just one. Them walking together toward his car. Her face mid-laugh. His hand wrapped around hers. That was all I needed. I drove home in silence. No music. No calls. Just the steady hum of tires on asphalt and the realization that whatever we'd built was already gone. When I got back, the house felt different. Not emptier, cleaner. Like whatever had been infecting it was finally starting to leave. I didn't throw anything. Didn't scream. I just acted. I froze our joint accounts. Changed the locks. Packed up anything valuable. Documents, keepsakes, my passport, and put them in a safe. Then I called an old friend of mine, a lawyer I trusted. Told him we'd need to meet first thing tomorrow. He didn't ask questions. Just said, I'll be ready. After that, I sat at the kitchen table. Placed her favorite mug down gently. The one she used every morning, white ceramic with little blue flowers. Next to it, I placed the photo. The final truth. The evidence that I wasn't crazy. That I hadn't imagined the distance or the late nights or the change in her laugh. That the man she had become when she wasn't with me was real, and she'd been protecting him, not me. I didn't cry, didn't rage, just sat there for a while, letting it all settle. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt clarity. It was cold, but it was clean. That night I didn't sleep. I laid on top of the covers in the guest room, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. The photo I took sat on the nightstand beside me. I didn't need to look at it again. It was already burned into my memory. Her face soft and open. His hand on the small of her back like he'd always belonged there. And the part that gutted me most wasn't the int asterisk Macy. It was the ease. They looked effortless, like this wasn't some chaotic mistake, like they'd been doing it for a while. By sunrise, my plan was already formed. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to scream, throw things, or go nuclear. I didn't want to give her that version of me, the broken, furious husband. I wanted to be clean, controlled. I wanted her to see what clarity looked like. At 7:45 a.m., I got dressed, made coffee, and texted my boss that I'd be taking a personal day. He didn't ask why. I think the way I worded it, "It's time I take care of some things at home," spoke volumes. At 8:30, I met with my lawyer friend, Dylan, in his downtown office. He had already drawn up the preliminary divorce paperwork based on what I told him the night before. I handed him the photo without comment. He looked at it, then looked at me. "You sure you don't want to go after her for everything?" "I don't want her money," I said flatly. "I want her out of my life." He nodded slowly. "You'll have the upper hand with this. No-fault divorce might be the default, but this changes leverage. Especially if you want the house." "I do." "Then we'll make it happen." I signed what needed to be signed. We discussed timelines, logistics, and what to expect. By the time I left the office, the numbness I'd felt the day before had started to shift. Not into grief, but into resolve. When I got home, I walked through the front door like a stranger. The air felt stale. I could smell the faint trace of her perfume in the hallway, sweet and acidic, like a reminder I hadn't asked for. I started moving through the house like I was preparing for a fire. First, I went to our shared office and backed up everything: bank records, shared photos, documents. I put the digital files on a hard drive and tucked it into my backpack. Then I logged her out of all joint accounts, changed passwords, canceled shared subscriptions. I left hers alone. Let her wonder why her Spotify suddenly signed her out. Then I walked through the rooms, collecting things that were mine, truly mine, and packed them into boxes. Old letters, gifts from my parents, photo albums from before we met, tools from the garage, the watch my grandfather left me. I didn't touch her stuff. I wasn't going to do that. I wanted her to see exactly what I had taken, and exactly what I had left behind. I wasn't erasing her. I was removing myself. Around noon, I opened our closet and saw it, the gray scarf, still folded on the top shelf, like it belonged here, like it had the right to sit in the same house I'd built with my own hands. I didn't hesitate. I picked it up, walked outside, and dropped it into the trash bin by the curb. Some things didn't deserve a second glance. Back inside, I made one final pass through the house. Everything was ready. Everything that mattered to me was packed, saved, or secured. I left only one thing on the kitchen table, her mug, and next to it, the photo. No note, no angry message, just a cup of silence and a picture that told the truth better than I ever could. It was almost peaceful. Around 4 p.m. I heard a car pull into the driveway. I didn't move. I stayed in the living room, facing the window, calm. The front door opened, and she walked in, keys in hand, hair a little windswept, phone pressed to her ear. She was mid-sentence, laughing about something. Then she saw me. Her voice faltered. She ended the call quickly. "Hey, I didn't think you'd be home this early." I didn't answer, just looked at her, watched the gears start to turn. She noticed the boxes first, not stacked, but present. Intentional. The house wasn't in disarray. It was too clean, too still. Then her eyes landed on the table. She froze. I saw it happen in real time, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition to something like panic. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She walked toward the table slowly, like maybe the image would change if she got closer. She picked up the photo and stared at it, as if sheer denial could bend reality. Adam, her voice cracked. This isn't what it looks like. That line, that tired, overused line. It's exactly what it looks like, I said calmly. She looked up at me, eyes wide. Please, let me explain. No. Adam, Stop. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked at her, steady and unblinking, and said the one thing I had rehearsed all morning. I know everything. I saw you. I talked to your brother. I followed the pattern. I stopped pretending. She blinked hard, tears forming, her breath catching in her throat. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. I know. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did. She stepped forward, her hands trembling. Can we talk about it? Please? Just talk. I shook my head once. There's nothing left to talk about. Silence stretched between us. She reached for the chair, sat down slowly, and ran her hands through her hair. I don't know why I did it, she said softly. It just happened. I didn't go looking for it. But he was there and I felt seen again. I felt alive, I finished. Yeah, I've heard the line before. She winced. I stood up. I've taken care of the accounts. My lawyer has the papers. You'll be served in a few days. She looked up, stunned. That fast? Yes. She stared at me like I was someone she didn't recognize. You're really doing this? She whispered. I already did. She buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders started to shake, but I didn't move to comfort her. I'd done that for years. Held her through every breakdown, every panic, every mess. But this one she made without me. After a few minutes, she stood up, wiped her face and said quietly, I'll pack some things. I'll call my brother. I nodded once. Then I walked past her, out of the kitchen, down the hall and into the backyard, into the sunlight, into the air, into whatever came next. I didn't slam a door. I didn't deliver a final monologue. I just left her there, standing next to a photo of her own making, holding a mug she didn't deserve. She stayed in the house that night, in the guest room. The next morning, she was gone. Just like that. I woke up before sunrise the next morning. The bed felt bigger than usual, quieter too. I laid there for a while, listening to the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the occasional creak of the house adjusting to the morning chill. No footsteps, no hairdryer running behind a closed bathroom door, no scent of her perfume wafting down the hallway. The silence wasn't unfamiliar anymore. It was just different, heavier maybe, but not unwelcome. I didn't hear her leave, but I knew she was gone. Something about the energy in the house had shifted, like she'd taken whatever was left of her presence with her. I got up slowly, careful not to disturb the stillness. I didn't want to break it. Not yet. The first thing I noticed was the guest room door, slightly ajar. I glanced inside. The bed was made. Her duffel bag, the one she'd kept since college, was gone. No note, no message. Just a faint indentation on the pillow and a folded throw blanket at the foot of the bed. I walked downstairs. The kitchen was spotless. Everything exactly where I'd left it the day before. The mug and the photo still on the table. I stood there, looking at them for a long time. The mug felt like a relic now, a useless artifact from a story I didn't believe in anymore. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands, and set it in the cabinet where it belonged. Not as a gesture of forgiveness or preservation, just to clear the table. The photo, though, I left that out. Not because I needed the reminder, but because I wanted her to remember what she left behind if she ever walked through that door again. I didn't plan on letting her, but part of me hoped the weight of that image would haunt her just enough to make her think twice before lying to someone else. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the table, phone in hand. No texts. No missed calls. I checked her contact out of habit, not expectation. Still nothing. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like waiting. I stared out the window while the steam rose from my cup. The backyard was quiet, the morning light cutting through the trees in soft, golden streaks. The wind moved the leaves like it was brushing off the dust of what used to be. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been 10 minutes. Could have been an hour. But eventually, I heard the sound of tires on gravel. A car pulled into the driveway. At first, I thought it was her, coming back for something she forgot. Maybe to apologize again. Maybe to try and fix what couldn't be unbroken. But it wasn't her. It was her brother. He got out of the car slowly, wearing an old hoodie and jeans. He looked like he hadn't slept, but when our eyes met through the window, he gave me a nod. Not out of pity, but understanding. I opened the door before he could knock. She called me, he said. Said she needed help moving some stuff out of storage. Didn't tell me everything. I figured the rest out. I nodded. Thanks for coming. He glanced toward the street, then back at me. You okay? The question sat between us for a moment. I thought about it, really thought about it. Was I okay? I've been lied to, betrayed, discarded without a second thought. But right now, in this moment, with the sun coming through the trees and the truth finally laid bare, I felt still. Not whole, but still. Yeah, I said. I think I will be. He didn't push, just nodded again and walked around to the trunk, pulling out 2 suitcases and a box. I held the door open while he carried them inside. We didn't speak while he moved through the house. He didn't ask questions, didn't point fingers. He just worked quietly, respectfully, like he was helping clean up the aftermath of a storm. When he was done, he looked at me again. She said she was sorry, he said quietly. Said she didn't know how to face you. She faced me just fine when she thought I was blind, I replied. He didn't argue. Instead, he let out a breath and said, I'm sorry too, man, for what it's worth. Not your fault. Still, he added, I wish I'd seen it sooner. Could have said something. I shrugged. Wouldn't have changed anything. She made her choice. He stood in the doorway for a second longer. If you ever need anything, let me know. I thanked him and he left. I didn't watch him drive away. I just closed the door behind him and leaned against it, letting the weight of the last few days settle into my shoulders. The house was quiet again. But now it wasn't a tense, awkward silence. It wasn't the kind that comes after an argument or hides something unsaid. It was an honest silence. Clean one, like the air had finally cleared after months of holding my breath. Later that afternoon, I got a text from her. Just one sentence. I'm sorry for everything. No name, no long paragraph, no promise to explain. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen. I thought about replying, about asking why or when or how long, but I didn't. I just deleted the message. Some apologies don't deserve acknowledgement. I spent the rest of the day going through old photos. Not the digital ones, the real ones. The ones we'd kept in boxes, never framed. Birthdays, vacations, dumb selfies in hotel mirrors, blurry **TS of dinners I barely remembered. It was strange. In most of them, we looked happy. Or maybe we just looked good at pretending. I packed the photos into a smaller box and labeled it archive. Not trash. Not memories I wanted to burn. Just the past. Something to be stored, not carried. By the time night fell, the house felt different. Not empty. Not broken. Just mine. She left quietly just like that. A message came days later. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't reply. I went back to work, picked up old hobbies and started sleeping again. Really sleeping. Weekends meant fishing trips, not tense silence. The house was calm. No more walking on eggshells. The only thing left from that life was a sealed box of photos in the closet. Untouched and now irrelevant. Time passed. I didn't chase new love. I just lived fully, honestly. Peace came not from revenge, but from the absence of lies. Then one day, quietly, someone new showed up. She didn't make promises. She just stayed. No drama, no secrets, just laughter over coffee, and a gentle touch that didn't feel borrowed. And in that calm, I finally exhaled, realizing I hadn't truly breathed in years.